So welcome for whoever just joined. This is Federica, I'm part of the Docsity team, and it's my pleasure to welcoming you all to this live webinar. Connected with us, we have Lawrence Murray from the Fordham University, Gabelli School of Business. Hi, Lawrence. Happy to leave you the floor and looking forward to receiving all of your questions into the Q&A box. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Federica. Hello, my name is Lawrence Murray, and I'm the Dean of Admissions here at the Gabelli School of Business at Fordham University in the United States in Midtown, New York City, so right in the heart of New York City. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to learn a little bit more about graduate management education and sort of advancing your education, and spending some time with me today to talk a little bit about some of our programs, but talk to you about what goes on sort of behind the scenes with the admissions committee. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time at the beginning telling you a little bit about our programs and our portfolio, and then we'll spend the bulk of our time on a slide that I have that sort of outlines the admissions process, and then we'll sort of talk about the tips and tricks and what the admissions committee is looking for there at that time. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat box, and we'll try our best to get to all of them. All right, so we have a fairly broad portfolio of specialized master's degrees here at the Gabelli School of Business. As you can see on the screen, we have 10 on-campus programs and 3 online programs. I think most students who are coming from abroad are looking for an in-person program rather than an online program. So as you can see in our analytics portfolio, we have 3 programs: Applied Statistics, Business Analytics, and Marketing Intelligence. In our business technology vertical, we have an information technology master's. We have 2 finance programs. One is general finance or corporate finance, and then we have a quantitative finance or financial engineering program. In the management vertical, we have management, media management, strategic marketing and communications. And then finally, in our accounting and professional services, we have a master's in professional accounting and a master's of professional taxation. As you can see here, most of our programs are STEM designated. STEM designation indicates that the nature of the program, integrated into the program, is a deep learning of analytics and technology. That's good for everyone. For international students, there's an added benefit because it allows those students to get an additional extension on their OPT or their work authorization after they graduate. So that's always a benefit. We do have 3 online programs. Again, most international students are looking for an in-person experience. They're looking to come to the US. But for those that are interested in the online programs, we have 3 online programs. We have an online version of our Masters of Science in Finance and our Masters of Science in Management. And then we have a Strategic Marketing and Communications Masters as well. I want to just talk a little bit about the student experience. As much as we talk about what happens inside of the classroom, we also talk a lot about what happens outside of the classroom. This is just a quick snapshot of some of the things that we have got going on here at the Gabelli School. We are very fortunate to be at really in the heart of business and at the intersection of a lot of different movements in business and in industry and in academia and research. One of those is around the Responsible Business Coalition. This is a collaboration between academic institutions and industry to address some of the issues related to ESG related issues, so the environment and governance and sustainability. We also have a thoughtful leadership certification. We're actually in the process of re-engineering this and combining it with some of the aspects of our Responsible Business Coalition, but it still contains deep sort of leadership development around assessments, leadership simulations, the opportunity for coaching, and then networking. For those students who have an entrepreneurial spirit, we've got what's called the Fordham Foundry. That's our on-campus accelerator and incubator. And we also have the Fordham Angel Fund. We do have a reasonable expectation that students are getting involved outside of the classroom. And so we have more than 25 now graduate student organizations. Some of them are aligned with professional careers like the Finance Society or the Marketing Group or the Management Consulting Club. Some of them are associated around sort of professionalization. So we've got organizations like Toastmasters or the Fordham Women in Business. And then some of them are affinity-based, like the Black and Hispanic Students Association, our LGBT group called Gabelli Pride. So there's a whole host of opportunities for you to get involved outside of the classroom on campus that really are at the intersection of the student experience, the academic experience, and the career and professional development as well. I mentioned career development. I think this is a hallmark of most business schools. So we're no different there, but we have a whole host of different, we have a full service career development office and a whole host of services and activities and engagement opportunities for our students. Here's just some samples of some of those opportunities: one-on-one career advising, workshops and specialized seminars, on-campus and virtual recruiting. The reality is virtual recruiting was starting to pick up even before the pandemic, but now it's almost a hybrid. It's almost 50-50. It might even be 60-40, 60% virtual recruiting and 40% in-person recruiting. We spend a lot of time helping students hone their interviewing skills. That is a strong connection point between the student and the companies. We have a very robust career spotlight series where we bring in industry leaders and subject matter experts. We have a growing alumni networking program. We do company site visits, both virtual and in person, and then corporate information sessions as well. But again, a full service career development office to help support students' career and professional development. So I want to spend the bulk of our time talking about the admissions requirements. So as you can see here, students are required to submit a resume, a transcript, standardized test scores, both for the what we'll call it your typical or traditional standardized tests, as well as language competency exams, essays, recommendations, and then of course there's an admissions interview. So I'll spend a little bit of time talking about each one of these pieces and what the admissions office is looking for, sort of the behind the scenes. So for the professional resumes look a little different around the world than they do in the US. Everybody's approach is a little different. In some parts of Europe and in South America, students are accustomed to putting their high school information on the resume as well as pictures. That's not standard in the US. Typically, if you're applying for graduate school, you don't put anything related to your high school and you don't put pictures on your resume. So I would encourage you, if you are listening to this or viewing this webinar from places around the world, a quick Google search on business school resumes will take you very quickly to a set of resources to help you put together your resume in an appropriate manner for graduate business education. But again, typically, if you don't have work experience, we'd be looking for you to have good, solid internship experience or part-time work experience that you've highlighted on your resume. We're looking for demonstrated leadership. So that leadership, both sort of in your what we'll call pre-professional work, those internships, as well as any part-time jobs, but also your leadership on your college or university campus, as well as leadership maybe in the community. Maybe you volunteer for a nonprofit organization or a community organization or a philanthropic group. We want to see that on your resume as well. For 99% of students who are applying to a master's program or even an MBA program, it's a one-page resume or CV, not more than one. I myself, I have more than 20 years of experience and I only have a two-page resume. So for most students applying to a specialized master's program or an MBA, you have to resist the temptation to put everything on paper, and you've got to hone this to just a one-page resume. And again, a quick Google search will take you to a wide variety of resources to help you put together your resume in the appropriate format to submit to business school. Transcripts. Your academic transcripts are one of the primary indicators in which we can get a glimpse of your ability to be successful in the classroom. Most of our students in our specialized master's programs, I would say most students in a specialized master's program are coming right out of undergrad, or they might have, 1 to 1.5 years of professional work experience. So your transcripts play a big part in the evaluation process, again, to determine whether or not you have the potential to do well and be successful in the classroom. For us, you can submit your unofficial transcripts to start the evaluation process, but you will need, before you actually matriculate, you will need to submit for a transcript evaluation and then submit the official transcript. So once you submit your transcripts to an evaluator, then they will send that back to us, and that will fulfill the requirement for your official transcripts. Again, you may be applying to, I would assume that you're applying to many schools. You'll need to check the school's requirements. But for here at the Gabelli School, we are looking for unofficial transcripts to start. And then once you've been admitted, if you plan to matriculate, you will be required to submit your official transcripts. Translations as well. If it's not in English, you'll need to get a translation even for your unofficial transcripts. But if it's in English, you can go ahead and submit the unofficial. All right, so I know that many of you have probably heard a lot of the buzz in the industry about the standardized tests like the GMAT or the GRE in particular. In the pandemic, so for the 2019, 2020, and 2020, 2021 admission cycles or academic years, many schools took a very lenient approach to these standardized test scores and either created waiver options or they stopped requiring the test or they became test optional. So if you don't require the test, that's pretty self-explanatory. No test is required. There's no option to upload a test score. And typically that's considered a sort of a test blind or no test option. Test waiver, the test is still required, but there are certain conditions that must be met in order for the test to be waived, or the test optional. We've opted for the test optional approach. And this means that we've put the decision in your hand as the candidate to decide whether or not you want to A, sit for one of these exams, and B, submit the exam score to be considered in your application. So one rational question that sort of comes out of that is, well, when should I take the test, or should I take the test at all? That's up to you. And again, I think it's up to you to exercise your due diligence and to be really thoughtful about your strength as an applicant and your alignment with the profile of the schools and the programs at which you're applying, in our case here at the Gabelli School, and whether or not you think that you need to take the test. So an example of someone who it's probably in their best interest to take the exam is someone who might be coming right out of undergrad. They don't have any professional work experience because they're coming out of undergrad. They don't have too much pre-professional experience. Maybe they've only had one internship. They haven't had any part-time work, and they've had very limited extracurricular activities or engagement outside of the classroom. And maybe their grades aren't as strong as what they'd like it to be. That's a case where someone needs to study for and sit for the GMAT or the GRE. Another situation in which you might want to consider taking this test is to maximize your opportunity for consideration for merit-based scholarships. The vast majority of business schools provide merit-based scholarships at the time of admission. So there's nothing you need to do. You simply need to complete and submit your application, and they will evaluate your candidacy, not only for admission, but also for a scholarship. And that's how we are. So students who want to maximize their opportunity for scholarship consideration should consider sitting for either the GMAT or the GRE or the executive assessment. Well, we also take that as well. The next sort of question that pops up around these standardized tests, these traditional standardized tests, is which one is the best test to take? we don't have any preferences for the GMAT, the GRE, or the executive assessment. You need to think through which exam do you think is going to allow you to submit the highest test score or the best performance. And that's the test that you should take. There are plenty of options for you to take practice tests and get descriptions of the test and the strengths of the test. You can go to the GMAC website to look for information about the GMAT and the executive assessment, and you can go to the ETS website to look for information about the GRE. But ultimately, it's your decision on whether or not you sit for the test and submit the completed test score. But that's how we're viewing, that's how we take the test optional approach. And then for the language competency exam, that's still pretty self-explanatory. If you're coming from a country in which English is not the official language, or your school in which English is not the official language of the school, you'll need to submit your language competency exam. We've expanded the number of exams that we've taken. We take the TOEFL and the IELTS, those are the pretty standard and legacy programs, but we also take the Pearson test for English and the Duolingo English test. And all 4 of these exams have an online option. You can go to you can do a quick Google search to go to their websites to see all of the criteria and the description of those exams. You can also go to our website. We have a list of countries in which would outline which students need to submit a language competency exam. In terms of essays, you will be required to do 2 to 3 essays. The essays are an opportunity for us to for you to actually share a little bit more about yourself and your motivations. This is not a secret. We put the essay prompts on the website. The very first one is around, why are you interested in the Gabelli School of Business and Fordham University and this particular degree program? And how does this degree fit into your short-term, midterm, and long-term goals and objectives? That may seem like an easy essay to write. It's not. You actually need to put some thought into it. We're looking for something a little deeper than, I want to advance my skills, or I want to be financially sufficient. We're looking for more than that. We want you to be thoughtful about why you're choosing the Gabelli School and sort of what values align between you and the business school, how you're going to contribute to the business school community and the university community, and obviously what you're going to get out of this, in a sense, again, your short-term, midterm, and long-term goals and objectives. Professional recommendations are another part of the application process. For most students that are coming out of undergrad, we encourage you to submit an academic letter of recommendation from one of your professors. Those of you that have some work experience, you can choose to do a professional letter of recommendation. I would encourage you, if you've done both, if let's say you're coming right out of undergrad and you've got some good folks that you can write, that can write academic letters, and you've also had several internships, you're more than welcome to submit both an academic and a professional letter of recommendation. The key to the letter of recommendation, however, is to ensure that you're selecting the right person. A lot of times students think that they need to put someone for a recommender who has a really high title, but they don't really know the candidate that well. You really want to make sure that the recommender that you are submitting actually knows you. They know something about your work ethic. They know something about your work productivity. They know something about your personality, your communication skills, your leadership skills. They can speak with depth and substance about who you are and what your goals are. The best letters of recommendation can also talk about a candidate's weakness or their areas for growth and development, and how pursuing this degree with this university or this particular program can address some of those deficiencies to help make that person a better person and a stronger professional. And then lastly, we have the admissions interview. Again, you'll need to check with the different schools that you're applying to, but for us, most of our specialized master's applicants will receive invitation to an admissions interview. Again, that's in your hand. We invite you. It's up to you to take advantage of that and accept the invitation for the interview and to complete the interview. But in the interview, this is our opportunity to learn more about you from a human to human perspective. We tend to approach these more like a conversation rather than an evaluation, a formal evaluation, but we are looking to get a little bit more about who you are, what your values are, what your goals and objectives are, and how you plan to contribute. This is as much as it's an evaluation tool and process for us, it's also an evaluation tool and process for you as you are trying to figure out what the best fit business schools are for you. So the admissions interview is also an opportunity for you to ask some questions as well. So that really is the behind the scenes, sort of the secret sauce to how schools are looking at the admissions requirements. Again, it's not secret. There are no there aren't necessarily tricks. It's pretty straightforward. But I think the biggest tip that I have for you is to spend time in the admissions process. We know that you're applying to many schools. I think on average, candidates for specialized masters are applying to like 6 to 8 schools. It's a lot of schools, but you should really think of the application process to business school as another job or an internship, and make sure that you're spending adequate time to make sure that you're putting together the best application to be considered for admission to the schools, as well as for consideration for scholarships. You'll see here, sorry, let me go back one slide here. You'll see here in terms of the timelines between application submission and the final decision release. Typically, if the candidate submits all of their documents in the time frame that we've asked, and they take advantage of the admissions interview and respond in a timely manner, it's usually somewhere between a 4 to 5 week turnaround for the admissions decision. Again, the big part of this is the admissions interview. So it's up to you as a candidate to ensure that you are scheduling that interview in a timely fashion. We'll send you an invitation. My tip to you is to respond to that invitation within 24 hours so that you can get your interview scheduled within a week or so of you receiving the invitation. Schools have many deadlines. Here are our deadlines. I think one of the things that surprises many candidates as they look at graduate business schools in particular is the many deadlines. You can see here for fall of 2022, we have 5 deadlines. 3 of them have already passed. The next one is March 25th, and then the last one is May 27th. Business schools have a lot of deadlines because they want to provide you as a candidate as many opportunities to submit your application when you feel that it's the strongest. For some people, they've been thinking about this for quite some time, and they choose to apply early because they want to get this process out of the way. They want to get it completed so that they go into the holiday season, the November, December, already with their plans set for business school. And some folks take a little bit longer, but it's up to you to decide when you feel your application is going to be best. Now, depending on the school, there might be some considerations for merit-based scholarships related to how early you apply. But I think I speak on behalf of most of our peer schools. People would rather take an applicant later if it's stronger than earlier if it's weaker. And so I think I'd be hard pressed to find a business school that would turn away a very strong applicant who happens to apply a little bit later. Your scholarship awards may vary a little bit depending on when you apply, but if ultimately the goal is to get admitted into a school, then you want to make sure that you do that when your application is the best. Costs are another part of this, and this is one piece that I think most students don't spend enough time on, especially international students, because there's an additional step there for international students. Once you've been admitted and you've made your decision, you got to fill out an AFCO form for the I-20, and the costs play a big part in that. I also think that many international students don't fully take into account the other fees that are associated with going to school abroad, primarily living expenses. These are the pretty transparent costs associated with going to the Gabelli School. You can see here our full-time MBA program is a set price. Our master's programs, we charge per credit, and the different programs have different numbers of credits. You can go to our website and see what those credits are. These are some one-time fees and some reoccurring semester fees that are all associated with this. We do offer scholarships, as I mentioned, in terms of helping to defray the costs or reduce the cost of the education. Most of this is awarded at the time of admissions. For our specialized master's programs, typically those scholarships are $10,000 to $30,000. But I want to spend, we do offer graduate assistantships and student loans, and we offer continuing student scholarships, and we also have student loan partnerships for international students. But the part that I want to emphasize, if we just take New York City as an example, there's one set of costs that are associated with going to school, and then there's another set of costs that are associated with living in New York City. So there are plenty of, if you go to our website, we have a cost of living estimator. You could just Google cost of living estimator New York City. There are lots of them out there. I encourage you to think very carefully and think through your financial resources and the obligations, the financial obligations that are associated with going to study abroad, because it's not, and it's definitely a strong return on the investment. But I think some people have sticker shock once they get to the US and realize that, you know, if you want to live in an apartment by yourself in New York City and only want to walk to campus, you know, that's going to probably cost you, you know, $3,000 to $4,000 US dollars per month. If you want to spend, you know, if you, let's say your budget is only $1,500 US dollars per month, then that might mean that you're living a little bit further away and it's a little bit longer of a commute. Those are all of that's all of the information that I have. I wanted to make sure that we have plenty of time for questions, and I can see that there's some questions in the Q&A and some comments in the chat. But we'll go ahead and start to address some of those questions.
Perfect. Let's start. So one of the first questions we have is about IELTS. So you did mention about some option. On the slide there was Duolingo. So can someone actually apply without having taken the IELTS or a similar English proficiency test?
Yeah, you can actually. So if you go to our website, and forgive me, I haven't committed all of these countries to memory, but you can go to our website and look under the deadlines and requirements, under language competency exams, and we outline which countries exempt students from taking these exams. As a general rule of thumb, if English is the official and national language of your country, then you don't need to take one of these exams. If your undergraduate degree is in an English-speaking country where it's either at the university or it's the official language of the country, you don't need to take one of the exams. But I always encourage you to take a look at the detailed information on our website to ensure that you understand if you are required to submit one of these exams.
Perfect, great. Another question about work experience. So you say, if I don't have much work experience, is it okay to put internship on my CV, or maybe anything else that is important to include? So if I don't have work experience, fresh graduate, what do you think is important to include in the resume?
Absolutely. Internships, we absolutely want to see the internships. Again, for most specialized master's programs, whether it's at the Fordham University or another university, the students in the specialized masters, the average age is 22, so they don't have any work experience. So we want to see those internships and those other types of activities that you've applied your learning. That might be research projects, it might be papers. In Europe, students are writing theses. And that's a general part of the undergraduate experience. We want to see that on your CV. But again, the tip here is it needs to be one page.
Perfect. Just wanted to highlight before that, as Lauren said, he has lots of experience, and your resume you mentioned is 2 pages, right? So just to give you an idea that for fresh graduate, a page is absolutely fine. Andrea has a question regarding applications. You mentioned before that students tend to apply to different schools. So do you think it's better to apply to more schools or not? Is it possible to move from one university to another in case you get accepted later? So probably someone is, I don't know, applying to Fordham at another university, gets accepted to Fordham. Can you move later?
Yeah, I mean, that's up to you. So all of this, to save your spot in any school, you'll need to submit an enrollment deposit. And that enrollment deposit holds your spot in that program until you enroll. So I'd say most people submit nowadays, most people submit enrollment deposits at more than one school. I think most of the enrollment deposits are pretty manageable in terms of cost. Our enrollment deposit is only $1,000 US. So it's not uncommon, when we talk to students that they've submitted an enrollment deposit at 3 or 4 schools, they may have applied to 6 or 8 schools, but they put their enrollment deposit down at 3 or 4 schools. And then once they've secured their spot at those schools, then they make their final decision on where they go. And typically that's because they've attended like an on-campus information session, or maybe they can't come to campus and the school or university is doing a session in their home country or in their city. They go to virtual open houses or admitted student events. It's typically after they've had some extensive engagement with the institution that they make their final decision on where they're going to go. But most students will put down an enrollment deposit in more than one school.
Perfect. Another question regarding programs. So someone is asking if the Gabelli School of Business also offer foundation courses.
So that's an interesting question, and I guess the answer is yes and no. So some of our programs are highly selective and they're very highly technical in nature. I'll use the Masters of Science in Quantitative Finance as an example. There are a very distinct set of prerequisites that you are required to have in order to do that program. So those are not foundational courses. Those are well above what I would define as foundational courses in order to be considered for that particular program. However, we also have other programs that don't have those prerequisites. And what we call foundational courses might be the basics in finance, the basics in accounting, the basics in statistics, the basics in economics, and the basics in finance. You're able to take those courses while you're going through the program. So for example, our Masters of Science in Finance program or a Masters of Science in Accounting program, if you don't have those basics courses, you just simply take those courses first before you start taking the more advanced courses.
Perfect. Questions regarding the prices. So they ask about if for the full-time MBA, probably I don't know if there was a slide regarding 7,500 just for this semester, or if it's for the full years, and asking if there is the opportunity of working out of campus. So basically, I guess if something works towards the program.
Sure. So for the full-time MBA, the tuition is $108,000 US. There's a $8,000, now it's $8,000 enrichment fee that you pay once, and you pay it in your first semester. And then there's a series of reoccurring semester fees, like a technology fee, et cetera, et cetera. So all in all, with all of the fees, whether it's the enrichment fee or the reoccurring semester fees like health insurance, the technology fee, et cetera, for the full-time MBA, you're looking at somewhere between $125,000 to $135,000 US just for tuition and fees. And yes, we do offer what's called graduate assistantships that allow the students to work on campus for a student job that helps defray the cost of education. Typically, students work either a 10-hour-a-week graduate assistantship or a 20-hour-a-week graduate assistantship, and it helps reduce the cost of their tuition.
Thank you. Interview. So before, Lawrence, you were actually mentioned about the interview, and they ask what you should prepare. And also after the interview, when do you expect to hear back? And if you actually hear back in any case, so if you get admitted or maybe if you don't get admitted.
Yeah, so I'll start with the last question first. You'll always get notified whether or not you're admitted or not admitted. In terms of the time frame, that really depends on if you have any outstanding admissions items or application documents that you need to submit. But typically for us, once you've completed your admissions interview, you should have your admissions decision within 2 to 3 weeks of receiving your admissions interview. After completing your admissions interview. In terms of how do you prepare, this is not dissimilar or unlike applying for a job. And so I think you should take the approach of how you would apply, how you would prepare for the interview for a job. And so thinking through, writing down, for example, one question that we're going to ask, the first question that we're going to ask in the interview is, tell us a little bit more about yourself. So you should have your elevator pitch down. I think that should be fairly common language for most people to understand what an elevator pitch is, your 30-second elevator pitch. But then we're going to ask you, why are you interested in this particular degree at this university at this time in your life? And you should be ready to answer that. So that means that you need to think through those answers yourself to make sure that you're being succinct, because we don't want you to talk for a long time, and to make sure that it makes logical sense, and that it connects to what the school, the strengths of the school. I'm always surprised when we get students who sometimes would say, I am interested in engineering and doing supply chain management at your school. They say this in the interview. Well, we don't have an engineering school and we don't have supply chain. And so that tells me that the student just sort of took a blanket approach to apply for all of their admissions interviews and didn't think through the nuances of each school. Each school is a little different. Your interview at school A should be a little bit different than your interview at school B. So thinking about preparing for your interview just like you would prepare for a job interview.
Great, thank you. So someone is thanking you for the interesting presentation, and I actually have to say thank you because it's been very useful to talk about this. Asking about career outcomes. So after studying in this case, of course, they're talking about the Gabelli School of Business, but what can someone expect from continue studying for a master or an MBA degree?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The career outcomes vary by program. I can speak, the full-time MBA typically at the time of graduation, and this information is all on our website. Typically at the time of graduation, about 70% of the students either have accepted a job offer or they at least have one job offer. And then the next time point is 3 months after graduation. And typically we're sitting at the 85 to 87% range. For specialized master's programs, again, it varies by program. I can talk a little bit about, with specificity, about our Masters of Science in Quantitative Finance. Typically at graduation, about 80% of those students have either accepted or have at least one job offer. 3 months after graduation, it's about 99%. Our Masters of Science in Accounting, most of the students who do accounting have an interest in pursuing a CPA. There's a strong alignment and there's strong integration between our Career Services Office, our accounting department, and accounting firms. So at the time of graduation, I'd say 99% of the students in our Masters of Science in Accounting and Tax have either accepted a job offer or at least have one job offer, and at 3 months after, it's about 100%. The rest of the employment outcomes, they vary by student. I think it's also important to note that it looks a little different for a domestic student than it does an international student. I believe in the spirit of transparency. It is challenging for an international student to get a job in the US. That's no secret. The pandemic made it a little harder. Arguably, it was hard even before the pandemic. But students who complete a STEM degree, they get the 3 years of OPT if they are looking for STEM aligned jobs. And then, typically students who do well also have the option of, being considered for H-1B sponsorship by their company. But again, in the spirit of transparency, we tell all international students, you need to have a plan A and a plan B. Your plan A may be to work in the US under OPT and, working for a great US company in the US. But you need to have a very reasonable plan B, which might mean seeking employment in another country, which you have work authorization.
Thank you. Actually, talking about this, someone is asking if employers in the US pay attention to the nationality of the student, if this somehow is actually something that they look at, or it's just about the knowledge and the passion for the job they apply to.
Yeah, it's just about the knowledge and their competencies and the jobs that they apply to. There's not a lens of we value one nationality over another. We place a higher value on this nationality and a lower value on another nationality. That's not the case.
Question from Elias is asking for someone that is not fluent in English or maybe not confident. Is there a period where they can actually learn the language? Of course, they need to submit the IELTS and everything, but is there some sort of like courses that the university can offer? Maybe anything that you can suggest to someone in order to get confident with speaking in English?
Yeah, so if it's developing a confidence in the English language and the command and use of the English language, we actually have, for our specialized master's programs, we actually have a very comprehensive program called Gabelli Talk. That is a 5 to 6 week program. Pre-COVID, it was in person, so it gave students the opportunity to come to New York a little bit early, to transition to New York early, but also to build a high level of confidence in their English language skills. And that program is really around the development and the honing of the English language skills and their command of English that's connected to communication and culture. So it's a fantastic program that's grounded in language development or language strengthening, but also around strengthening their communication communication skills, and then learning a little bit more about American culture. If in fact it's more about learning English, let's say your English skills are pretty weak, we also have a program that's a 1-year program, and it's called our International Business Bridge Program. Again, it's grounded in more basic English language development program, or English language development competencies, and that's a year-long program. And so you would do that program before you enroll into a master's program.
Thank you. Elena is asking us about marketing communication program. So he's asking if the program is only carried out online or also if there is an on-campus version of it.
There is not an on-campus version. So our online programs are the Masters of Science in Strategic Marketing and Communication. That's only an online program. And then the Masters of Science in Management and the Masters of Science in Finance both have online options.
Perfect, thank you. No questions about scholarships. So you mentioned before that when you submit your application, you sort of automatically also put an application for the scholarship. Is open to anyone, or do you have some sort of specific scholarships in place based on the nationalities or anything else, any other?
Yeah, we actually do have some specific scholarships that are based on certain characteristics or attributes of students, but the vast majority of our scholarships are open to anyone who submitted a completed application. Again, you can go to our website and take a look at you go to the funding your education page, and you can see some of our specific scholarships that are targeted towards certain populations.
Thank you. So before we were talking about strategic communication marketing, which is a master that is only online. Mm-hmm. Nice question. They're asking us if online option is better than on campus for international students.
So on campus, most students, like 99% of international students, are seeking a fully immersive in-person experience, and that's what they want. So they have no interest in doing an online program. But there's a practical side to this. You don't qualify for OPT or CPT, the work authorization, if you're in an online program, if you're an international student. So 99% of international students are seeking those applied learning options. So CPT is what you do when you're doing an internship, and then OPT is the work authorization for once you've graduated. You don't qualify for those if you're in an online program.
Thank you. Payment, is it possible to pay in installments once you get admitted and you are enrolled?
Absolutely. If you go to our website now, if you just Google, if you go to our website and in our Google search bar, you simply type in payment options or payment plan, tuition payment plans. It'll take you to the website that explain that. But yes, you can do, there are a couple of different options that you can do. You can pay it all at once. You can pay it in 2 installments, 3 installments, or you can do a monthly payment. All that information is available online.
Thank you. So one thing that we haven't mentioned is about the student ratio in terms of like nationality, how international is Gabelli School of Business. Someone is thanking you for the presentation and asking how many students from Africa do you have in the moment, or they usually enroll, and if it's possible to join any sort of cultural clubs to know other students.
Yeah, so I'll answer the last question first. Yes, we have a wide variety of culture clubs or affinity clubs, professional clubs, or career clubs that you can join that helps you integrate and engage and network with students across all of the other programs. So lots of opportunities within the business school, also at the university at large, but also, you know, we're right in the heart of Manhattan. So there are lots of opportunities within the city of New York as well that allow students to expand their personal and professional networks. In terms of the number of students from Africa, I don't have the number right off the top of my head. We do have students have enrolled in Africa. The number is relatively small. That's one of our strategic target markets, and we've increased those numbers over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. And actually, in COVID, COVID has helped us accelerate that growth in the students who come from Africa. I think in this year's class, the students that enrolled in fall of 2021, I think there are about 7 students from Africa who are enrolled across a number of our different programs. I don't remember which programs they're in specifically, but there's total about 7 students.
Nice. So at the moment, we run through all the questions, but keep writing them into the Q&A box. We still have some minutes left. So any sort of questions that you might have, as you can see, there is an email address just on our slide. So if you do have any sort of questions also coming up after the webinar, feel free to send an email. We will be also sending you an email after this event. We will be also inserting some important link, and you can have a look at the full academic offering, a link to the website and others. So one thing that I actually wanted to ask you, Lawrence, because I mean, you see a lot of application every day. So you said, like what could be good to add or not add. I just wanted to ask, can we sort of summarize maybe what are the most common mistakes that you see? You mentioned some, but maybe if we can just have some sort of a list. And I ask all of you to listen to this because I believe it's very important.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one of the common mistakes is a resume or a CV that's longer than 1 page. I think another common mistake is when you're writing your essays or even filling out your application, copying, pasting across multiple applications. I can't tell you how often we've seen applications that take information from an application to another university and they submit it for us, like in their essays. Instead of saying, this is why I really want to go to the Fordham University Gabelli School of Business, they put, this is why I want to go to Rutgers University. This is why I want to go to McGill University. This is why I want to go to the University of Texas. So making sure that you proofread your essays to ensure that you're not making that mistake. The other thing is not doing your homework. And this is actually one of our biggest pet peeves as admissions officers, is when students, either they, in their essays or in the interview, say, tell me more about your program. Or they, in their essays, they actually haven't done any research on the program, and they're not making a personal connection between their values, their professional goals and aspirations to some of the strengths of the business school. Or in their interviews, they spend their time asking us questions, and that question is, tell me a little bit more about this particular program. There's so much information online. I am really jealous of students who are going to school now, because when I was this age and I was going to school, there wasn't Yes, there was an internet. I'm not that old, but there just wasn't this level of information available so that you could do your own research and compare and contrast and learn more about the programs. So a common mistake is not spending enough time in the essays, aligning your interest and your goals and your passions with the school. And then in the admissions interview, taking the time to ask us about our programs rather than asking much more substantive and thoughtful questions about what you might experience in the program. I think the last mistake I think many people do, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier about the letters of recommendation, whether they're a professional recommendation or a academic recommendation, they're very weak. So the academic letter of recommendation will say, you know, I knew Johan. Johan was in my statistics class, and Johan showed up every day and he sat in the front row and he asked lots of questions. And that's all the letter of recommendation is. That means nothing to us. And it's equally bad when we get letters of recommendation from people from the corporate side, you know, that might say, Michael is an analyst at this company. And you know, I hear that he's doing a really good job, and that he shows up to work every day, and he asks really good questions. And this is from the CEO of a company. Again, that doesn't mean anything to us because it's just not saying anything about the strengths of the candidate, their work ethic, their communication skills, their leadership skills, or their leadership potential. And again, the best recommendations also touch on some of the areas for growth and development and how the program, the school, the university can help address some of those.
Actually, this leads me to another question. I wanted to ask, is there a way for prospective students to reach out to sort of alumni, for example, and, you know, ask, or maybe current students to ask what's their experience and maybe ask for some sort of advice or similar things?
Sure. Yeah. So we partner with Unibuddy. They've been a great partner with us for the last year or so. So if you go to any of our web pages, in the bottom right-hand corner, a Unibuddy window will pop up, and you can access our student ambassador portal through Unibuddy, and you can connect with students across a wide variety of programs. I think we have about 40 or so student ambassadors across the programs. You're more than welcome to start a dialogue or communication there. I'd also, you know, encourage folks to look on LinkedIn. LinkedIn gives a student a glimpse into the alumni network. And I'd say if one of our alums has put their information online, that means they're open to people contacting them. So you can go to the Gabelli School of Business website. You can look for the alums. You can sort of filter it by what you might find interesting or what your career goals are. Let's say you want to work in finance or media and entertainment. You can see where they work, where they live, and I would encourage you to reach out. Again, if they've made their contact information visible on LinkedIn, it means that they're open to people reaching out to them.
Thank you. Coming towards the end of our conversation, I wanted to thank you, Lawrence, because you really gave us very valuable advice. And, you know, I'm sure that for whoever is thinking about putting an application through at the Gabelli School of Business or any other, you know, institution, I believe there was a lot of information. So definitely a lot for you to digest. We'll be recording the session. We will be sending you an email with a link to the recording so you can actually watch it again to, you know, get all the key aspects that we covered. Wanted to ask you, Lawrence, if there was anything else that you wanted to highlight or any sort of advice that you want to give to our audience tonight.
No, I would encourage you. I think, you know, COVID has made schools more accessible virtually. I would encourage you to take advantage of those virtual engagements, whether they are more formal events. Like yesterday, we just had an open house. Next week, we have our Climb Diversity Summit. In a few weeks, we'll have a Fordham Women in Business Summit. And then we have opportunities to engage with alumni, current students, with an admissions officer. So there are lots of different ways to engage and learn more about the business school, learn more about the university, and obviously learn more about the program and the admissions and application process. So I would encourage you to take advantage of all of those virtual opportunities to learn more, so that when you're submitting your application, you're doing so much more well-informed.
So thank you so much. Thank you, Lawrence, for your time. Thank you all for being connected and for all of your valuable questions. So thank you so much for your question, for your time. We will be sending you an email after these events, so check your inbox, and any sort of question that you might have. As you can see, the team at the Gabelli School of Business is approachable. So, just write them an email, and any sort of question that you might have about programs, application process. So I'm sure they will be able to support you with this. So thank you so much, Lawrence, once again, and all of you for being connected. And we look forward to seeing you soon then. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.